Hi, welcome to Business Influencers. I'm your host, Chris Salem. Hope everybody's having a great week. We are excited to have you here. If it's your first time here at Business Influencers, we've been with the Touch of Life Foundation, TALRadio now, going on almost 5 years since its inception. And we hope you're enjoying a lot of the different podcasts that are on the TALRadio.org platform. And we are always dedicated to not only business, but how you influence people. How do you create impact and value? And that's what we're all about here at Business Influencers. And each and every week, we bring in subject matter experts sharing their words of wisdom and insights to help elevate you to the next level. Today's show is being brought to you today by Alumni Direct. Alumni Direct is a social media community platform dedicated to bringing alumni together from all different generational types and an opportunity to meet new people for the first time. Now, it is a membership program taking out all the noise out of social media. You get to generate genuine and authentic relationships with the people you choose to interact with. If you'd like some more information about Alumni Direct, check them out at alumnidirect.com. That's alumnidirect.com. Today's show is going to be focused on you. Yes, you built that life. So we're going to talk about you built the life. So why doesn't it feel like yours? We're going to be talking today with Becky Estby. She is the CEO of Next Monday, author of the upcoming book, Uncommon Courage, explores why many high-achieving women can look successful on paper while feeling unseen, exhausted, or misaligned on the inside. She shares exhaustion can be information, why peace is not the same as giving up, and how women can begin redefining success, leadership, and belonging on their own terms. And a little bit about she helps professional women in leadership grow through peer groups, coaching, events, and leadership consulting. She is a former senior HR, SHRM designated organizational development executive, and she now works with high-achieving women who are successful on paper, but again, feel unseen, misaligned, and exhausted. Her book, Uncommon Courage, helps women stop assuming they are the problem and start redefining success, leadership, and again, belonging on their terms. And without further ado, we welcome Becky Estby to the show. Becky, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. Well, we always like to start the show, Becky, with the backstory, about, we're going to be talking about uncommon courage today, again, feeling, for women that, they're out there, but just for some reason don't feel the same. And if you could give us a little backstory from your perspective, what led you to what you're going to share with us here today?
Yeah, I'm going to take you all the way back to, I grew up on a farm. I was the youngest of six, so very traditional farm family. And the roles were defined very early as far as what the girls did and what the boys did. And being the youngest, I was often, the one that, well, Beck will do it, and so why that's important to this story is that I think I learned very quickly, very young, what pleased my parents and what didn't please my parents. So I started chasing a definition of success for someone else very young. So I was high achiever, perfect grades, went for all of that. And I carried that into my career. And so what I found in my career as for myself, my own journey, and then many of the women I have met along the way and now work with through Next Monday, is that sometimes we're chasing something, we're exhausted, we're giving it our all, and at the end of the day, we're still feeling unfulfilled or feeling unseen or a misfit. And so the book was meant to be my story, but also stories of a pattern of women that I'm seeing happening in the world today, of women just really giving it their all, but feeling like something's just they're not quite fulfilled. And so it's about having the courage to, face that. And then how do you move forward?
I love the fact that you're standing up for more women. And I agree, being an emotional intelligence and communication expert, I speak at a lot of industry conferences, especially HR events. And I oftentimes see this in myself, even though being a man, I pick up on this. What can you share with the women leaders that listen to our show? We have several that listen here that are in corporations, they could be in small businesses, mid-sized companies. If they're feeling that way, like what are some of the signs? Like, is it like maybe some of them are unsure, but yet something's off. They know something's off. What were some of those signs, cues, whatever that may be?
Yeah, I think, Chris, what happens is the physical signs start showing up long before we can get our mind wrapped around the fact that maybe there is a disconnect. And so for me, I just accepted that I was having headaches, that I needed a bottle of Advil to go into every meeting, that I was tired and exhausted, and you start looking for the medical reason for that, right? And you think it's something else, and here really it is what you're carrying, the load you're carrying. And so it's about recognizing that maybe, women start to think, because women have a tendency to have imposter syndrome and, other things much more than men. 70% of women, even in executive positions, feel like they're an imposter. And so women often equate, if I'm working this hard and it's not working, it must be me. I must be the deficit. And so then they just work harder and harder and give more and more. And they think, well, surely if I do this, then it'll get better. And they keep waiting for it to get better. And unfortunately, it doesn't. And health issues come about.
It's that they're out of harmony. I always like to say harmony, not out of balance, but they're just, there's a misalignment. And what would you share, like what you share in the book, and the suggestions that you would have if women, now hearing this might say, well, that could be me. What would be some of the things they could start with, to start looking into getting aligned again, feeling like they, more than they think they are, like they're seeing themselves, in a much negative light compared to others. And it's just a matter of making some shifts here and there.
Yeah, one thing I would suggest for women is find a few people that you can truly trust to be your whole self. People that will listen to you and, share different perspectives, both the positive, but give you some tough love too, because in executive level roles for women, often they're kind of lonely. They can't really share it within the organization because that might feel like weakness. And oftentimes I hear from women that I have wonderful friends, but my friends aren't really who I can talk to about my work environment. And so I just really I've seen tremendous growth and success for women who can join a peer group where they're surrounded by other women who get where they're at and who can give them a different perspective, give them the energy and the next step to take to really get themselves out of the situation they're in. And, someone to really say, you can't continue you can't continue this way. You're exhausted. You're falling apart.
Yeah, like you said, if you come out of alignment, even if you're really good at what you do, obviously they're in a position because of that, it can now start to impact that area as well. If you're exhausted or mentally, emotionally, and then eventually physically, and then over time, just like anything, it becomes burnout.
Absolutely. Yeah. I hear women say, I lost my temper today, or it's so unlike me, or, and that happens to everyone, but that's a sign of like, you've hit the max, you've got to do something.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I hope the women leaders that are listening to this show take heart and hear what Becky is sharing, because this is so important, because a lot of times we've covered a lot of topics in earlier, here on Business Influencers around burnout, and burnout is very subtle. It's not something that just smacks you in the face immediately. It's something that builds up. It's like, you put that money in that 401k, it accumulates over time, right? You're not really paying attention as much. So it's the same thing with burnout. And so these are valuable insights. Becky, what could be some of the things you could share if there's like in the book, or any like process that you might share? Is it a methodology, anything that helps them to start making that shift and then start to sustain a better way of achieving that harmony or balance?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first step in the book is kind of in three parts, and the first part is awakening. So the first thing I would say is start paying attention to what you're feeling and thinking. And oftentimes there's a thread going way back, right? We have all these limiting beliefs from way back in our childhood, and we believe something about ourselves. So start paying attention to those beliefs and start paying attention to the tug you're getting on where you want to go and what's misaligned. And then it shifts to, the book is designed to then shift to courage. And I talk about that. I feel courage is one of the biggest missing leadership skills. And I don't think we're often taught about courage. But what I mean by that is men and women, I've seen too many sacrifice what they really believe or go along with the flow or do the head nod because they have a title, a paycheck, and some safety and security in not speaking up. And that's really damaging to leadership teams, and it does a disservice to the organization as well. But the idea here is to start having some courage, to have a voice, to start leaning into those things that really could make the situation better for you. You're exhausted, you're giving your all. So what small step can you take? Take a little bit of control. And then the book shifts then to where you can find peace. So where you find peace is sometimes it might mean that you leave the organization or the situation you're in, but that is not always the answer. The answer sometimes is just figure out how to change the situation you're in for the positive. And so talking about like finding that peace where you're no longer chasing someone else's success or definition of success. You're chasing what's going to be meaningful for you and what your body and your mind and spirit can handle for you.
Great advice. Great advice, because when it's all said and done, you're in it for the long game, and you got to sustain, and those are valuable pieces of information shared. And we are going to encourage everybody later here in the show that when Becky shares her contact information, again, that information will be in the show notes as well, that you could reach out to her if you have any specific questions or any information that she could address for you. This is fantastic. And what would you suggest, Becky, when women start to really commit to this, what you shared, it becomes now, it doesn't mean you're going to feel great, guaranteed every day, but you're going to feel better. It's more sustainable. Share with it, how important it is, making that commitment to do this. And then, like you said, aligning yourself with a peer group, whether if it's people in your industry or could be just women in general that share a common ground in this area. Why, again, that is so important. And, in any suggestions to anything you could steer them to.
Yeah, I've seen too many situations where people are walking into work, a place they love and, are loyal to, but yet walking in feeling like they're carrying a 50-pound suitcase behind them. And so, really for women to be okay that we don't have to do it all. We can't do it all. And if I'm going to continue down this path, it's going to affect everything: my job, my family, and so yes, the peer groups is a spot. And sometimes, like I said earlier, it's it's just 3 to 5 people that you can count on to really be in your corner. What I found was I didn't always fit as an introvert. I was the HR leader, an introvert, and a woman, often the only woman on a leadership team. So I often felt like a misfit, and so it's easy to say I must be the one that's deficient. But instead, realizing that you do have talent, you do have great capacity, you're delivering great results, and giving yourself some grace and asking yourself what is true here and what is not true, and then making a decision. Can I have the courage to stand up and make this a better situation? Or do I need to make a change? And that's very scary. It's always scary to make a change. But what is the cost of not making the change? So most women ask, I can't leave or I can't make a change because it's going to cost me my title, my paycheck. I have to provide for my family or whatever those things are. But instead, they should be asking, what's the cost of not doing something? And the cost is all of those things, the sleepless nights, the headaches, the physical symptoms. And so taking that, sometimes it's just a small next step. And the more you take a small next step, the more you get more courage and confidence to take the next one, even if you fail, right? So, confidence and taking an action actually leads to more confidence, even when you fail. So I would just say, take some action.
Wow, valuable advice. And you reminded me something just recently. I did some executive coaching for a woman leader in a municipality who was also introverted. She was put into a leadership position to interact now with dominant personalities. And she was more of the kind of like on the DISC profile, like more of the S, a very high S, and then a C, very systematic, analytical.
Yeah.
But she was terrified that she had to like become somebody she wasn't and kept questioning, I'm not suitable for this role, but not realizing what you just shared, her strengths could come about in leadership in other ways. Like she could lead from the back, not necessarily from the front, but adapting her personality, not changing it, because you can't do that anyway, to adapt it to the people she's interacting with or the situations she's involved with. And how, like you just said, how that really helped her to realize that I can do this and not take that home with her. It just reinforced that when you said that. I was like, wow. So thank you for being transparent with that about yourself. And so important. So important.
Yeah. And I learned, from that, you spend years trying to fit in or belong. And what I'm now recognizing in this point in my career is that I am going to create those spaces where I feel like I belong and that I'm getting joy out of. And so sometimes we fight too hard to have others, not everyone's going to like us, and that's okay. Or we're not meant for everyone, and that's okay too.
Yeah, so true. That's so true. As long as that you feel comfortable in your own skin, you are your own person. You have a primary personality driver. You're not here to try to change that and be somebody you're not. Right. It's just learning how to be who you are, but adapt that to different situations and people in the workplace, at home, in the community, whatever that may be. So, wow, great insights. What else could you share with us, that you feel would really help, with what you're sharing here with the women leaders listening and those listening later?
Yeah, I have a simple tool in the book. It's called the mirror test. And the mirror test is really as simple as, if I need to make a big decision or take on a new initiative or, just really don't know which way to go, am I going to choose comfort or am I going to choose what I feel is in alignment with my values and stay in my integrity? So the mirror test is as simple as, if I make this decision and I look in the mirror tomorrow, am I going to be comfortable looking back at myself? Will I have done the right thing? And so it's really a test of courage, having the courage to say, no matter what the noise is, no matter what everyone else is telling you, what feels right for you, what's values aligned. And if you can look in that mirror, then at the end of the day, that's what's going to be important. And one way for women to kind of start getting there is to just journal, like notice when you're doing things out of discomfort and notice when you're doing it out of, just taking a step for your integrity and your values alignment. Not to judge yourself, but just to start notice the pattern of how often you're sacrificing yourself for someone else.
Wow. Love it. Great advice. And like you said, that courage, that courage always comes from within, but, having that peer group, like you said, just gives that extra push, that somebody they could relate to. That I always say that with people when I'm doing communication and they got to improve in communication, I may recommend Toastmasters because
Mhm.
Toastmasters will be in a place where they won't feel like they're like, like, oh, I'm the one who's got, needs to improve. Everybody in there needs to improve. I'm on the same page as them. I don't feel like I'm alone. So you feel like you're more likely to open up and share and kind of learn from each other. So, wow, great insights, what you shared there. And I think that's so important. Do you feel like that organizations overall should encourage that more often? Like, whether if it's coming through I don't know if employee assistance provider through their resources to tap in. Maybe there could be people like yourself who are doing this and helping women leaders. Why this is so important and where this can benefit not only them for retention, but also how it plays a role in building a psychologically safe workplaces. There's so many ways it could go from there.
Right, right. Yes, I do feel, I wish more organizations did invest in peer groups. And so often, you see it's common that there's hunting trips or golf tournaments or, golfing days or whatever. And oftentimes that's the men, women golf too, but I see women feel guilty about attending a peer group. And at the end of the day, what I would say to the organization or the CEO is that these women are growing and they're coming and getting business advice and personal advice. They're able to bring their whole person and they're going to be stronger and healthier and feel more supported, which is going to benefit you tenfold at the end of the day. And it's a very small price to pay to keep that really high performer engaged versus having them, really flame out because they are just overloaded.
Well, I agree 100%. Yeah, it's so true. And I wish organizations could see that long term because oftentimes coaching, consulting, or they're nice, but they're always the first to go when things get cut in versus not seeing it long term and the positive impact it can have on the individual and then eventually a team by if that person now is being the example and the resource of that and inspiring other people to step up in their roles and do it. I love it. Love it. Is there anything else like from the book you have out? We want to make sure that people are going to get a copy of that as well. So we'll make sure that everyone will have a link to that, and you can share that information here also on the show when we get there. But anything else that you feel like from your experience or the long-term effects like it could have on a woman's confidence, self-esteem, and just I guess the more maybe finding that purpose again in their careers.
Yeah, unfortunately, I've seen a lot of women come to the backside of their careers and maybe something happens, a bad day, crying in a meeting or whatever happens. And the organization often doesn't respond well to that because they don't know how. And all of a sudden they go from this, years and years of high performance to all of a sudden they're starting to get, people are like telling them they're a problem. And so I just really strongly recommend that women really take the time to not take that as a like I'm failing and and then just keep working harder, but take it as I'm shifting, I'm changing, I'm growing, and maybe the system can't hold me anymore. I'm a really huge believer in that. I wish we could do more of bringing our whole selves to work. And what I mean by that is often and I was in HR, so I dealt with a lot of performance issues, right? And it's very easy to go down they're not people, they need to perform. And I wish we could be a little bit more empathetic about, hey, this doesn't feel like you, what's going on? And give people the opportunity to say, thank you for recognizing and honoring all the work I've done to date. And yeah, I need some help. Like raise the flag. Don't be afraid to raise the flag. And if the organization doesn't respond in a positive way, that's information for you. And then you have choices to make, but don't just sit and let it continue and take it as your own deficit.
Well said. Well said. And we hope, they're sitting there, and we hope that there are HR leaders listening as well to our show, why this is so important. This is a valuable topic because just as there are men leaders, there's a lot of women leaders out there. And this could also be, go for men too, in
Absolutely.
many ways. So but it's so important what Becky is sharing here. And Becky, just great insight. As we get towards the end here, is there anything that you would like to kind of just kind of bring it full circle, kind of wrap up everything that you shared with us to a call of action for our listeners listening now and those listening later?
Yeah, I think my call to action is really about having uncommon courage. And I call it uncommon because too often I did see leaders, men and women, put their head down in moments where they should have stood in their integrity, they should have done the right thing, or they should have stood up for what they really believed in. And so my call to action is, don't always do what's comfortable, because when you have to answer to yourself down the road, that's not going to feel good. Do what, your values are telling you to go towards where you feel most aligned. And it might cost you, a title or some dollars, but you'll gain so much in the end as who you are as a person. It'll give you that peace you're looking for.
Such great advice, such valuable, always knowing. I know when I stepped into who I really was after living this lie that I had lived in, I was supposed to be a certain person to get ahead. And, because again, I was always looking for that validation from my father that I never got. When I became whole because of that, it changed everything. It just really did. And in terms of the quality of my life up to that point. So valuable information. Well, we are at the end of the show, Becky, and first of all, before we let the audience know where to find you, we want to thank you personally for taking the time out of your schedule to be with us here. I want to thank you on the behalf of not only myself, but the team here at TALRadio, including also our board members. That I'm also a board member for the Touch of Life Foundation. We want to thank you for taking the time to be here.
Well, thank you, Chris, and thank you for what you do. I love that you're sharing leadership lessons with your audience.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. And so with that being said, we want to let the audience know, how can they get in contact with you? What are you up to, and anything that you'd like to give them, including the book?
Yeah, so they can go to next-monday.com/uncommon courage, and there they will find information about the book, and they actually can get a free chapter by going there. The book is actually going to be released on September 9th, so coming soon, and it'll be available on Amazon. And then if they go to next-monday.com, they can find information about our peer groups, the work we do. We hold a large women's summit, and we do executive coaching, so would love to connect with anyone there. Or they can find me on LinkedIn, and it's Becky. The last name is Estby.
Wow, great. We'll make sure everybody has that in the show notes. So this way we encourage everyone to get a copy of the book of Uncommon Courage. Reach out to Becky. Also, you can connect with her on LinkedIn as well. And we encourage everybody to do that. And please share this episode with somebody you feel can benefit from that. Well, we want to wish everybody a great rest of your week. We'll be here next week, same time, with another subject matter expert sharing their words of wisdom and insights to help elevate you and your level of influence to the next level. Till then, everybody, have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next week. Take care.